everybody. Really good to be here in Bangkok. Thank you very much for the opportunities gift for the next 10 minutes. So this is kind of a keynote, maybe something refreshing. And thank you very much, dear leaders here in travel retail, for taking these next 10 minutes with me. My name is Lennard. I created a foresight and venture hub, kind of a studio, which is basically investing into travel retail and backed by one of the biggest travel retailers and duty-free operators globally called Niemann. So today I'm talking about, probably what you all feel is something mutual, the space between. It's already here, perfect. So I'm not talking about the space between cities, not talking about the space between an origin and a destination, way more about arrival and departure, about security and the gate, about excitement and experience. I want to talk about airports, right? And I think airports are quite interesting because it's this one stop which everybody of us, equally who's air traveling, is kind of always taken for granted. But it's also this one stop which is not being disrupted so far. So, you take your mobile, you book on your mobile, you ride share to the airport, and once you're there, the experience is like kind of stuck in the 60s or 70s in a way. So when we are talking about airports, we feel that there is a lot of space for disruption, and I think we commonly would agree. But the question is, why is there actually space for disruption? Because the numbers are booming. We will see more than 5 billion air travelers within this year, and forecasts are stating that we will see 8 billion travelers within 2040, which is quite a number. So if a growing industry is the foundation of it, why should it be a challenging industry? And I think we have to look deeper into the business model of an airport to actually understand the challenges we see here. Now, I think airports, it's very simple. It's kind of a physical platform, and they need airlines to bring people, and they need retailers to generate revenue out of these people, right? So most of you might not know that airports are actually generating more than 50% of their cash flow by duty-free stores and other retailers. So it's the biggest bunk, basically, of what an airport is doing in terms of revenue. So quite an important cornerstone of this whole business model. Many people are talking, when they are talking about airports, airlines, and retailers, about the magic triangle of players within this ecosystem. But I consider it rather being a fragile triangle, because it depends on people spending time and money at a place where they actually do not want to spend time, right? And we heard that earlier today from, I think, Laura from Booking, who stated that it can even be a destination driver for airports being more efficient. So let's talk about time. Since COVID, we saw a massive drop of dwell time. And dwell time is the time spent between security and boarding. So yes, this number got a bit better. It recovered in 24, but it never went back to pre-COVID levels, and we do not see it coming back to pre-COVID levels. So we see people spending less time at airports. Now, there are two facts which are important here. On the one hand, a 10% increase in dwell time leads to a 5% increase in revenue. Simply speaking, more time, more money, right? And on the other hand, almost 70% of travelers, so 7 out of 10 people, are actively trying to minimize their time spent at airports. And I figure this is somehow the paradox, right? So we see airports trying to be more efficient, we see consumers wanting airports to be more efficient, but on the other hand, this is a challenge for the current business model, because we need to have travelers spending time at airports and spending at airports, basically. And this is something we will continuously look at, because in the first ever in history, what we see is that passenger growth and retail revenues are decoupling. Normally, they are always growing in parallel and falling in parallel during the pandemic here. You can all see that, right? And ultimately now we are seeing this decoupling, and the question is, should we try to pull the travelers to keep them longer at the airport? Should we basically handcuff them to spend more money? To be honest, I don't think that this can be the answer, right? We need, as an answer, we really need to understand how travelers engage and how to design them seamlessly journeys throughout the airport experience. So the answer to close this little gap here between these two lines will be technology, and we have to understand technology a little bit better to understand why. Technology can be measured in waves, basically. So there's always a technology push and then a pull from society or from markets at large, right? And I guess from the age group, everybody in this room knows the last wave of technology around digital networks, around platform economics, and we've seen so much disruption within travel, but not in the airport. It happened all around the airport, right? And this will be massively different now in this what we call wave 6, where we see technologies such as artificial intelligence, biometrics, IoT, robotics, and so on, because we know it's happening already today, right? AI is 10 times faster than a human being by detecting a dangerous item in the CT. We've been discussing biometrics and customs today over and over again. So this is happening already, and this will massively change how people travel at airports. So now, one learning, we need technology to close the gap, but the question is how? Now, the problem with technology, or not problem, let's say challenge with technology, is that technology evolves at an exponential rate, but organizations don't. So there is what we call a gap of innovation, basically, between what a corporate can do, what an organization can do, and on the other hand, what technology actually does, right? And how do we close this? We know that corporate innovation, the tools of corporate innovation, often don't function well enough to do so. Let's say R&D, mostly too slow to actually catch up with the technology developments. M&A, mostly too expensive to continuously invest into these kind of technologies, right? And we see here venture capital being a hedge to close this gap of innovation. And why is that? Because venture capital, on the one hand, creates insights and access to new technologies, new behaviors, and it gives you the potential, the breeding ground to test and learn very quickly. Because if you want to learn around a new technology, you have to find easy use cases. Now, on the other hand, venture capital drives returns. Well-done venture capital funds are driving massive returns, which then can basically pay for the innovation a corporate is doing. So corporate venture capital, in a way, is what's very important long-term to close the gap of innovation in shorter and shorter innovation and technology cycles, right? And this is basically what we do in our venture studio. And what you see here is the traveler journey, and you see a selection of a few startups we are working with. Basically, it's really just a selection because I cannot and I don't want to share everything, right? But I think the interesting part about it is that we are seeing synergies along the whole traveler journey. We are invested into companies like Bounce, which is Silicon Valley startup, one of the leading luggage storage companies in the world. Really, really strong traction right now. Other example would be Cube Asia for the bottom line, right? Which is a data know-how platform around the categories we are selling in travel retail, which leverages the bottom line. And why does it work as a corporate venture capital arm of a big retailer? It basically works because we understand what the operations need, we understand their pain points, but we also understand from the other side what startups can deliver. And this is kind of the flywheel, not only in diligencing startups financially, but also in understanding where does lie the breeding ground for innovation. So we've been working now 5 years as a single LP fund, quite successful fund so far, and what we are currently seeing is that there are so many like siloed companies across this industry, right? So in our very close industry, it's airlines, airports, and retailers. But along the whole traveler journey, we see so many companies which are not really interested in sharing data, sharing understanding around innovation, and so on. So what we are building is we are building Fund 2, which we are considering being a strategic platform for innovation, for an understanding of what are the technology drivers within our industry. Because most of these technologies I've just mentioned, which we are currently seeing at airports, you can basically replay them on any of our industries as well, right? So I'm running out of time. This was very quick 10 minutes, but if you find this to be interesting, we at the Garage, we have offices in Singapore as well as in Hamburg, and we are building and we are collaborating, and we would be really open to do so with you guys. Reach out. Thank you very much.